joined now by Gordana Slepcev, the CEO of Lomiko Metals. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the invite. I'm happy to be here today.
Very good. It's nice to see you. Now, you've got two projects, one in Quebec, one in Newfoundland, and Lomiko's uniquely positioned, I think, in these sort of fraught geopolitical times. You've got exposure to graphite and antimony, both of which have been restricted by China in terms of exports. Your La Loutre project in Quebec is particularly interesting. It's been vetted both by the U.S. Department of Defense and by the Canadian federal government, and has been eligible for grant money from both. I mean, could you talk a bit about that to start us off? One, describe the La Loutre project and the opportunity there, but also then talk a bit about that grant funding and the significance of that funding, what it tells you and how far it takes you.
Yeah, for sure, happy to do so. So La Loutre is our flagship property and it's the furthest advanced. We also have another 7 properties in graphite at the various stages of the development, and I'll talk maybe a little bit later about these ones. But we have received the funding from DoD, from US government under the Title III. So that covers 50% of all the costs that we would incur to complete pre-feasibility study, baseline data collection, feasibility study, and metallurgical testing. So most recently on Wednesday, we actually announced that DoD has approved these costs for the pre-feasibility study to be covered 100% by Department of Defense. So this is really huge for us because it gives us an opportunity to actually finalize pre-feasibility study at this time and also, keep a project moving forward. What we have done is actually reallocate some of the costs more towards the bulk sample. We also have a grant from the federal government, $4.9 million, and that covers 75% of all the costs. So we would cover that cost, and then DoD would cover the cost for pre-feasibility study. So this is really huge for us. So between both groups, there is about $16-17 million in funding, and that's about half a cost that we would have to spend to get project to construction decision. And this is really huge. 16 million is double our market cap, and that's the money that investors don't have to put in. So that's avoided the dilution, and that's the value that actually these grants bring to Lomiko and to development of this project.
So the 16 million, what's the runway on that in terms of, before you need to go to the market and top that up?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, this is all covered in percentage of the funding by these agencies. Of course, DoD overall covers 50%, but of course, as I mentioned, they'll cover 100% of the pre-feasibility study. Then Department Natural Resources would cover 75% of the cost, but more of the cost on the upfront, it is Lomiko's cost and the bulk sample and excavation, planning, that kind of stuff. And then eligibility is mostly on the flotation testing and transformation of the flotation concentrate into the anode material. So yes, we would need to be going outside to the markets for funding because we're publicly traded companies and there are costs, of running the company. And also we need the working capital because yes, we have activated all these grants. We've been receiving the refunds both from Department of Defense and from the natural resources, but also these funds work in a way that you have to spend the money, do the work, look for reimbursements. In some cases, we can look for advances, and we are doing that as well, but we need the working capital, running the company and making sure, as we do this work, we have the funds in the bank to cover the cost. So, yeah, it's a huge for us, and, being able to move with pre-feasibility study, that's really huge.
And your confirmation on Wednesday of the U.S. Capitol, I guess, was there, given what we've seen with the so-called Department of Government Efficiency in the U.S., was there ever any concern that might not be extended? Or, announcing that, was it a a relief at some level, or was there ever any
Yeah, we just wanted to say that yes, the grants in process, it all works well. We're meeting with the Department of Defense on the regular basis. We have monthly calls. I actually met with them on just 2 days ago. So yeah, I think the funding that they committed to, that's still going to stay, of course, as it is. And then I'm not sure about the groups that are maybe in process or planning to apply for this, because the landscape may change, but there is a big thing to kind of read in between the lines with all these announcements, even though unfortunately aluminum and iron were hit with 25% tariff, critical minerals are at 10%. So, you know, President Trump was still saying that they need critical minerals. And I believe not just the US, but the world needs critical minerals. And of course, you know, we're tied quite a bit with US government, but we also can sell anywhere else in the world to all other markets, you know, Europe, Australia.
And jurisdiction has taken on a whole new significance, I think, with what we've been seeing.
Yeah.
And maybe while we're talking about that, we can move on to your Yellow Fox acquisition in Newfoundland, and it's unlike La Loutre, which is graphite, this is an antimony project. Could you talk about the significance of antimony and in the context of Yellow Fox as well, and what this new project means for you and how you plan to advance it?
Yeah, so I worked for many years in Newfoundland. I'm very familiar with the province. It's a really great place to work. Everybody's very friendly. The government's extremely supportive and helpful. And then I worked with Metals Creek before when I was a CEO of Anaconda Mining. And, you know, this property came up available, so we really jumped on the opportunity to acquire it, because it is 25 kilometers northeast on the same trend as past producing antimony mine Beaver Brook. And, you know, the result obtained so far are really encouraging. So it gives the Lomiko exposure to another critical minerals that's really much sought after. You know, there are no many productions in the North America. I don't think it's any at this point. I think there is one development project down in U.S. Perpetua Resources, but I'm not sure that there's any producing mine in North America at this point.
And antimony's significance in terms of application and end use?
Yeah, it's used in many industrial applications, you know, as a hardener in the alloys. It is used in many other applications like fire retardant. And the biggest use, actually 50% of all antimony actually goes into the solar panels. I don't know if people really knew that. So that's really increased need for antimony as well. And most of the antimony is actually refined in China, believe it or not. We talked with some groups. There are some, you know, in the Middle East and some in Europe, but otherwise it's like same as a graphite. It's dominated by China.
Right. And you have some other projects as well that you're involved in. Could you maybe just give a high-level view of what those are?
Yes, happy to do so. So our Rousseau project has turned quite well, you know, really exceeded our expectations. So with the work we did in the fall, we have clearly outlined 4 zones, 2 very well and 2 we actually have to do more work. So about 3 kilometers in the length between 2 most western zones, and one of the zones, the grades are all above 20% carbon content, and the highest grades are about 28% carbon content. That's really, really high. So our plan there is once of course the snow's off, to go and do more work in the field, better define these deposits, do some trenching, and then prepare for drilling. We actually could drill these 2 zones, so we're kind of there at that point. Really happy with the results. And a few other properties are very promising as well, but really Rousseau is kind of outshining them all, to be honest.
Oh, good. So maybe we could just finish up just with how investors should measure progress for Lomiko over 2025 at La Loutre, Yellow Fox, Rousseau. How should you be monitored and judged, I suppose, by the market as your success factors?
Yeah, so we intend really to start with the pre-feasibility study. We had the proposal in place, and those have been there for quite a bit of time to say, as we also provided these proposals to DoD quite 2 years ago, to be honest. So, you know, this is all updated. We intend to start that, you know, later in the spring, later in the winter, early spring. And then going from there, that's really the biggest flow. And the second flow is actually the bulk sample, permitting, excavating, and really processing that flotation concentrate, which will happen before the end of the year. So hopefully also pre-feasibility study would be done by end of the year as well. It all depends on, you know, how fast we can move with the field programs, geotechnical and that kind of stuff, because that also hinges on the permits as well, as you can imagine. And of course, there needs to be done the work to identify locations, and then the work really to permit certain things there along that. But end of 2025, early 2026, we would estimate that we would have pre-feasibility done. And also, we want to engage a group to do preliminary economic assessment on the downstream potential. Because something that perhaps I want to emphasize here is this is the critical mineral play of the Luther, and we're not looking only to produce flotation concentrate. We want to produce anode material. And we did quite a bit of the testing, battery testing. We have demonstrated on the lab scale that we can take that mineralized rock and make batteries. So now we're doing this increased level of the testing with the bulk samples to actually demonstrate that on the bigger and bigger scale. And also these materials and the testing are very important as we're talking with the downstream you know, groups that would either make batteries or EVs. So we're negotiating these contracts, and we need these materials for them to test so we can go through the qualification processes.
So no shortage of activity at Lomiko over 2025.
Yeah, and I mentioned we plan, of course, to do the field program at Yellow Fox. First start with the soil testing and then move probably in the fall as we go, maybe with the drilling if we're ready. If not, we'll have to do more work, maybe trenching, you know, depending on how the field program goes.
Understood. Thank you very much for the update. That's very helpful. That's been Gordana Slepcev, CEO of Lomiko Metals. Lomiko trades on the TSXV with the ticker LMR.